Today we're going to discuss 4 Atlanta area neighborhoods that you probably haven't heard anyone else talking about. Every single one of these neighborhoods provides great value in terms of how far your dollar is going. They are all close to Atlanta's most popular amenities, and they all have plenty of safe areas that anyone should feel comfortable living in. So let's dive right in. So first up on my list, I have Candler McAfee, and one of my favorite parts of my job is getting to see new places around Atlanta that I wouldn't have otherwise visited. So I was recently helping a couple relocate here from Louisiana, and they had a certain budget, they had a certain size requirement, and the wife worked in the medical field, so she needed to be a certain distance from Emory and another hospital that was located downtown. And these criteria had us looking at a few different places, but one of them was the Candler McAfee area because it was equidistant to these 2 locations. Now, if you're doing your research about Atlanta, especially if you're completely unfamiliar and you've never spent time here, you're gonna get a lot of scary information, especially when you research South Atlanta. You know, a lot of people tell you can't live anywhere south of I-20, and that's just not the case. You know, I talk about it all the time. Atlanta is very micro, things change rapidly, street to street, subdivision to subdivision. You really can't judge a book by its cover or cross any area off the list because things change so rapidly from one area to an area that's very close by. So Candler McAfee is probably not an area that you're gonna have come up in your top 10 up and coming neighborhoods, you know, whatever other YouTube videos you're watching and whatever blogs that you're reading about. Candler McAfee is probably not going to be one that you see spoken about in a positive light, but after seeing multiple homes there, driving around this area, there are some great pockets, quiet streets, well-kept homes, and really good value in terms of what you're paying for a house and what you're actually getting for that money. Let's pull up a map real quick and look at exactly where we're talking about. So we have the city of Atlanta, we have the perimeter here created by 285, and you see downtown Atlanta here, and we're gonna be looking in this southeast quadrant, Candler McAfee. So right off the bat, you see great proximity to the airport. That's typically gonna be a 15-minute drive, and Emory, as well as the CDC, are in the North Decatur area. So you can see that's gonna be very convenient for someone who has to commute to either of these places. And it's also gonna be about 15, maybe 20 minutes into downtown Atlanta, traffic depending. So for this particular situation, and again, a lot of people that I help do work in the medical field, whether they're a student or they're working at one of the local hospitals, this is a geographic part of town that could work if you're bouncing around between hospitals. It's gonna depend on exactly where you are. But even if you just are either working at the CDC or you're going to Emory or working at Emory, this is gonna be a very easy commute for you. And you know, North Decatur, Decatur itself are very expensive areas. Avondale Estates, you know, a lot of people are priced out of these areas and they can't afford to buy a home in these immediate areas. And this is a great option potentially for those people. So like I said, close to everything, the airport, downtown. If you wanna enjoy the ritzier areas, Midtown, Buckhead, that's gonna be 20 to 30 minutes away, traffic depending. So you're in the city, you're close to everything. Now, I will say in this immediate area, you're not necessarily gonna have the highest quality amenities. You will have your basics, you know, your strip centers with your grocery stores and relatively decent shopping. However, you're not gonna have your TJ Maxx, your Trader Joe's, certainly not your Whole Foods, your Starbucks. You're not gonna have some of the amenities that unfortunately seem to only exist in higher income areas, right? So what you have in your immediate area, maybe not for a date night, maybe not for some of the shopping that you like to do, but all of those things are gonna be very close by. Now let's pull up the MLS and see what you can get for your dollar in the Candler McAfee area. So I have the FMLS pulled up and I've got, generally speaking, the Candler McAfee area highlighted here. And so these are all the listings. And let's just go through the results real quick to give you a sense of what kind of value you can expect in this area. So going through this, you see we have a new or newer construction 2024 home. It's 2.5, 1,700 square feet, so not extremely large. However, if you do want that new construction, modern farmhouse style, and you don't have a larger budget, which it typically requires in different areas around the city, this is a place where you'd be able to do that for $485,000. And on this side of town, not only in Candler McAfee, but as you head east from downtown Atlanta, heading towards a perimeter 285, things get less dense. You're gonna see a lot of ranches. If you like ranches and you're working with maybe a little bit lower of a budget, you're definitely gonna be in luck in this side of town. You're gonna have a lot of really nice ranch options. Now, the quality is gonna vary, of course, you know, depending on the materials used and the craftsmanship, the quality of the contractors. So you do have to keep an eye out for those things, but I definitely see plenty of options that look great. This home is 459,000, 3.3, 2,400 square feet, so good size. And it looks like a nice renovation. It's got a garage. So, you know, seeing a lot of really nice options in the mid 400s, even in the low 400s, traditional style homes that you might see in the suburbs more with a decent piece of land. This has high ceilings, you know, looks like a very quality home for 3.5, almost 2,500 square feet for $429,000. Now again, if you're comparing these prices to what it was a few years ago, you're gonna be disappointed potentially, but the reality is with right now, $429,000 is kind of a lower budget, at least this far in town, of course, depending on the area we're talking about. So as I said, if you're working with that, not even sub 500, maybe sub $475,000 budget, but you really got to be in town because you're working in certain areas or you just need a larger home and you can't afford it in a nicer area, I think this is a great place to check out. So some really pretty options, garages, you know, all new finishes. This is going to depend on your taste, of course, but totally renovated, totally move-in ready, no projects to inherit necessarily. 425,000, and even as we go down into the low fours and high $300,000 range, you're still gonna see some decent ranch options. Again, the quality is gonna vary, might be a carport instead of a garage, but if you're younger, you're starting out, or you just don't wanna spend that much money and you need to be in this part of town, I think this is a great place to look. 390,000, 5.5, almost 2,800 square feet. That's pretty hard to do anywhere else at this price point. And you know, with regards to is it safe, all I can tell you is my experience, and everyone has a different viewpoint of this, so really you're the only one that can be the arbiter of your safety. But a lot of these subdivisions are just, you know, retired professionals, and it's really quiet streets. Everything's well maintained, the homes are well maintained, the landscaping is done, really very little foot traffic to speak of. Now, as I said, the surrounding areas, whether it's the gas stations or the Kroger or whatever it is, you know, those might not be the best, right? There may be some sketchy foot traffic in those areas or just some things that you don't feel comfortable with depending on what time of day it is. But in terms of these subdivisions and where the homes are, plenty of very safe areas. And I have clients living in these areas now and they have nothing but positive things to report. So Candler McAfee, if you happen to be working in the Decatur area, whether it's Emory, CDC, or if it's downtown at one of the hospitals and you're in a little bit lower of a budget, but you need to be in town, I think this is a great place to take a look at. And you know, you don't want to be scared off by people telling you that anything this far south is extremely dangerous, because that's just not an accurate representation. Next up on my list is Stone Mountain. Now, you may have heard of Stone Mountain watching 30 Rock. I think that's where Kenneth DePage was from, and they make it seem like an extremely rural area. Stone Mountain is right outside the city, right? So this is a great option if you are working inside the perimeter, but again, you don't have a massive budget like some other people. Stone Mountain will be an easy commute into town, pretty much anywhere for you. Extremely convenient getting into the city and really good value. Now there are areas with $1 million homes in Stone Mountain, but there are also areas where you can do extremely well in the mid fours down to the mid $300,000 range. And especially if you like a larger piece of land, you like a little bit more privacy, you don't want to be on top of your neighbors, again, Stone Mountain is going to be able to provide that. It provides a nice mix of urban and suburban. There's a historic downtown area. Of course, there's Stone Mountain itself, which is a very popular amenity. Hiking, events throughout the year, you know, laser show, Snow Mountain. It's a popular amenity for Atlantans. But you can also get a very suburban feel in many parts of Stone Mountain where it doesn't feel like you're so close to the city. So if that's something you're interested in, I would definitely take a look at Stone Mountain. Again, let's pull up a map to see exactly what we're talking about. All right, so we have our map here pulled up again, and you see Stone Mountain right here to the east of Atlanta. So as I said, extremely easy commute in town, depending where you are. Stone Mountain's a pretty big area, but generally speaking, again, your commute to the airport is not going to be more than 45 minutes usually. Your commute into downtown Atlanta could be as little as 25 with no traffic, and you're gonna be able to get to all the popular amenities, Midtown, Buckhead, all the shopping, you know, typically within 30 minutes. All of this is traffic pending, but it is not difficult to get into town or any of the popular amenities from Stone Mountain. Now let's pull up the MLS again and see what kind of house you can buy in Stone Mountain. So I've got pretty much every listing pulled up. There's 370 right now, starting at $475,000. We've got a 2000 build. It's a 5.3 on 2,900 square feet, 0.35 acres. Now I'll warn you, as is the case with many places around Atlanta, some of the finishes are gonna either be untouched or just look wonky. So depending on what your style is, you may need to have a portion of your budget set aside to do some upgrades, but you know, that was just really one example. We're gonna find some other good ones in here. A 2020 build with a 2-car garage, 3.5, 2,500 square feet. Homes are a little bit closer to one another, but definitely move-in ready, and some of your more modern finishes at $450,000. We've got large traditional homes, 1981, 4.3, 4,000 square feet, almost half an acre, 450,000. This one's certainly gonna be dated, I'm sure, inside. Really hasn't been updated, but you know, as long as a home has good bones, then it doesn't necessarily have to be extremely expensive updates. It's just gonna depend on what your demands are. But as you can see, plenty of really solid options in the mid $400,000 range. And also some decent architecture from time to time. You see mid-century modern homes pop up occasionally. Now again, if it's in this price range, it's probably gonna need quite a bit of money sunk into it, but not as cookie cutter as some of the suburbs that we see around Atlanta in terms of the construction of the home. So really plenty of good move-in ready, livable options. This one looks great. 4.3, 3,900 square feet, $429,000, almost half an acre, totally move-in ready. And we haven't even looked at any of the attached options, which obviously is going to be much more affordable for you. So I really like Stone Mountain if you need a larger home. You got a bigger family, you're commuting in town, you're in a sub $500,000 budget. Maybe you don't want to be right in the city, you want to be more of a suburban feel. In that case, Stone Mountain should definitely be on your list of places to check out. You may have heard really negative things about Stone Mountain, or you may just have heard nothing about Stone Mountain, but I do think it needs to be talked about more often. And from what I understand, Stone Mountain is growing quite a bit economically as well, in terms of bringing jobs into that area. This could potentially bode very well for its future and the home values in that area, but make sure you don't sleep on Stone Mountain. Next up on my list is Lakewood Heights / Lakewood. I've talked about this part of town quite a bit. I've owned a home in South Atlanta for quite a while, so I'm familiar with how this area is grown. But certainly if you're Googling, you know, places to live in Atlanta, this is not gonna be one of the neighborhoods that pops up. However, as Atlanta is growing, especially around downtown with GSU buying up property, everything is growing and moving south. In terms of how it's developing, new businesses, the Beltline is being finished. And so some of those neighborhoods that are to the south of Atlanta that maybe were previously dangerous or undesirable for whatever reason, the value prospect here is looking better and better in terms of what you're close to amenities wise and what you have to pay to purchase a home here. So again, let's pull up Lakewood on a map so you know exactly where we're talking about. All right, so we have a map pulled up and let's see where we are. We have a square of Lakewood and Lakewood Heights highlighted here. You can see we are on the south side of town, extremely close to the airport. So if you travel frequently for work or work in that industry, this is gonna be extremely easy commute for you, as well as downtown Atlanta. This is 10, 15 minutes away. So you're very much in the heart of the city in Lakewood, Lakewood Heights, okay? Now, we're talking about South Atlanta, and you're worried about safety. I can't give you a blank answer. Everyone has different criteria. Everyone grew up in a different area, right? I grew up in city environments, and so I feel like I have maybe a little bit more tolerance for what I see at a day-to-day. If you grew up in a very rural area, you might be less comfortable with some inner city living for whatever reason, for better or worse. What I can tell you is there's lots of very safe areas all around South Atlanta. You know, like I said before, subdivisions full of retired professionals, or just otherwise normal people living their lives, maintaining their homes, not causing any issues. Are there areas that may look sketchy, have drug activity, or places that you want to avoid? Sure, but you can't label an entire neighborhood that way or an entire part of town that way. So you've got to speak with your realtor, you've got to speak with people who live in this area, people who live in Atlanta, and you've got to go spend time in these areas, drive around the subdivisions, around the homes that you're looking at, different times of the day, different days of the week, to get a real sense of if you're going to be comfortable living there, because your opinion is the only one that ultimately matters. However, obviously I'm putting it on this list. I would feel plenty safe about living in any of these areas, and I would purchase a home in any of these areas, but that's just for me personally. So geographically, right in the heart of the city, close to a lot of really popular amenities. And again, this is an area where you might not have the date night restaurant in your immediate neighborhood. You might not have the popular retailer shopping in your immediate area, but you're gonna be a short drive to all of those things. So now that we know where Lakewood Heights is, again, let's look at the MLS listings to see what kind of house you can afford in these areas. All right, so looking at these homes, you're gonna have a lot of variability in terms of the quality for sure, but you can see $419,000 for a 4.3, 2,150 square feet, built in 2020, completely move-in ready, has some modern updates. You're right in the heart of the city. Again, with all these homes, in any area, whether you're purchasing in Lakewood Heights or Alpharetta, the quality is gonna vary tremendously. You're gonna see beautiful new construction homes built by quality builders, and you're gonna see cheap flips by awful contractors that you should completely run from. That's the case anywhere around Metro Atlanta. So the quality may vary, but I mean, these are some good options. $389,000 for a 3.5 at 1,900 square feet. You know, you don't have your modern cabinets, your real hardwood floors. You may want to change some of the paint, but you're owning a home pretty much in the heart of the city for under $400,000, which isn't easy to do in many areas. There's also a great amphitheater in Lakewood, I should mention. It's been around forever, but if you know, you're a concert goer, that would just be another bonus. Really popular amphitheater in this area. So of course, as we go down in price, they're gonna be smaller homes and they're gonna start not looking so great. And sure, you may have some expensive homes here as well. $599,000, this is a 6.3, 3,000 square feet. Lots of upgrades inside. Would I pay that much to live in an area like this? Probably not. I'm typically a proponent of buying the smallest house in the best neighborhood that you can, but you may have a reason for really needing to be in this area, and you may fall in love with a home at this price point. So you're gonna have lots of options between the low threes to the low $500,000 range. You're gonna be in the heart of the city, close to a lot of great things to do. So if that's you, I would definitely check out Lakewood Heights. And there are other neighborhoods around here, right? So if we go back on the map, this doesn't just really apply. I mean, even areas like Polar Rock, which, you know, a few years ago I wouldn't have suggested, but it's coming up quite a bit. South Atlanta, certainly, you know, all these things apply and even more. You're getting really close to the old Turner Field, you know, Summerhill, you're getting close to where GSU is expanding. So a lot of growth in these areas. I've always liked Sylvan Hills, and you know, you've heard me talk about Jefferson Park and East Point. So I like a lot of neighborhoods in South Atlanta. I just wanted to highlight this one because I hear so few people talking about it. The final neighborhood I want to talk about today that you've probably never heard discussed elsewhere is Mosley Park. This is a Beltline neighborhood on the west side of town. There is a lot of variability in this area in general because it's going through an extreme gentrification process. So you're gonna have a lot of income variability, housing cost variability, and amenity variability, and just your atmosphere, lifestyle, and quality of life can change quite a bit depending on what neighborhood you are on the west side and even what street you live on. So it's really important to study some of these areas, understand them, and of course, do your own research and make sure you're moving to a place that you are comfortable living in. Let's pull up a map real quick and see exactly where we're talking about. All right, so we've got Mosley Park pulled up on a map. You see we are right in the heart of the city, just west of downtown Atlanta. So obviously, this is city living. You're gonna have city amenities at your fingertips, not far from the airport, downtown, midtown, Buckhead, any of the most popular amenities that you hear about when you think about Atlanta are gonna be right at your fingertips on this side of town. And there's the Atlanta Beltline, which I've discussed in many videos, basically a 27-mile loop around downtown, former railway corridor that has been paved and now is, a path for walking, jogging, biking, scootering, and it has created some connectivity in a very sprawled out, disconnected city. So it allows you to access parts of the city by foot, sometimes faster than if you were in a car. So obviously this is an extremely popular amenity, and it's honestly totally transforming all the neighborhoods that it runs through as amenities are built up around the Beltline as it's finished in phases. So when you're looking at the west side, again, this area is going through a lot of changes, in part because of the Beltline, in part because of a bunch of other factors. So for better or worse, this area is gentrifying quite a bit. And some of these neighborhoods around here, personally, I would not feel comfortable living in, and some I would feel completely comfortable living in. I wanted to mention Mosley Park because I think it's reached a great threshold of, feeling safe for most people and having really good affordability still. In many instances, you're gonna be walkable to the Atlanta Beltline, which is a really big deal. And like I said, you're right in the heart of the city, so it's very convenient to many things. And there's also a lot of beautiful historic homes on this side of town. So if you don't like the cookie cutter craftsmen that you typically see in the suburbs, this could be an area where you get one of those all brick houses, with the really high ceilings, or you get the wraparound front porch. You see a lot of cool architecture on this side of town. So this is Mosley Park. The Beltline's gonna be running right through here roughly. And so, it's gonna be, the Beltline's right here. It's gonna be an easy walk for you in most instances. The Lee and White retail development is right here in the West End. You see White Street here. So some major amenities, breweries, restaurants, distilleries, all kind of stuff has already popped up right off the Beltline, which making it very convenient. So, unlike some of the areas that we've already discussed where you're not gonna have high-end or desirable amenities in your immediate area, you are gonna have them extremely close by in Mosley Park. This is an area where you are gonna be able to go to a nice place for a date night, especially since it's really close to Blandtown as well, where there's a lot of high-end restaurants, but really great amenities in Mosley Park itself and convenient to everything. But as we discussed, things can change rapidly street to street. Dixie Hills has some really rough looking areas, I'll be honest with you. Vine City, English Avenue, this is what they call the Bluff, Bankhead. These are areas that have a reputation and history for high drug trafficking. Now again, that doesn't mean there's not good areas to live in those neighborhoods as well, but if you're gonna live in one of these areas, you just wanna know what you're getting into and wanna make sure that you and your family feel comfortable. So let's go ahead and look at some of the listings that are active right now in Mosley Park so you can get a sense for what value you could potentially be looking at. So we got 14 listings here. Now you can see this is listed for $765, so you are starting to see high-end flips in this area, which that's kind of par for the course in gentrifying areas. Whether or not you want to buy the most expensive house in an up-and-coming area is kind of a matter of your financial philosophy, your personal situation. I guess one way to think about it would be if this were on the east side Beltline area, like Inman Park, this would be, much more expensive, probably over $1 million. So you're gonna get some higher end flips that you're seeing here. But, a 3,000 square feet, 625. This looks really nice so far. Your modern high-end finishes. So you can have a really nice house if you're working in that budget. 4.3 new construction, built in 25, 2,600 square feet. Now, like every other place on the list, you're gonna have cheap flips and you're gonna have quality renos. So you need to work with a professional who knows the difference. But, 2023, a 4.3, 2156, it says new construction, but obviously it's not. For 488, let's see, so some smaller homes, if you're working on a starter budget, these are still gonna be move-in ready in the mid 4s, even in the high 3s sometimes. You're gonna see some cute ranches. This is a historic area. There is so much history in Moseley Park and the West Side in general. A lot of these homes have some incredible history and stories behind them, which is important for a lot of people, but a 4.2, 3,800 square feet for $440, not bad, honestly. MLK King Jr. Drive is a pretty busy street. Thurgood, I've helped a family purchase a home at Thurgood before, $400,000 for a 3.3 at 2,000 square feet. You know, not bad. And if we pull up the map and see how close we are to the Beltline, you know, that's gonna be a couple blocks, really. So, you know, very desirable area, some good affordability. Obviously, the lower you get in the price points, you're not gonna have some of the modern finishes, but not everyone likes those modern finishes. And, you know, we're still looking at move-in ready stuff in the mid threes. So if I'm a single person or a younger couple, I wanna be in the city, I wanna, you know, not break the bank, I wanna spend less than $400,000, and I want an appreciating asset that in 10, 20 years is gonna really grow in value, I think this is a neighborhood that I would seriously take a look at. So great value in Moseley Park. So there you have it, 4 neighborhoods that you probably haven't heard discussed too much in other videos or in blog posts. Of course, this is always just an excuse to talk about different areas of Atlanta. There's many other neighborhoods that don't get talked about enough, and I'll highlight those in the future, but this is all just about downloading information to you to help build up your confidence in your move to Atlanta and identify which of those neighborhoods is really going to be a perfect fit for you and your family. So thank you so much for watching. Please comment any subjects that you want to hear me talk about, anything that you want to hear me go over, or parts of this city that you'd like analyzed. And please like and subscribe if you haven't already. It's a great free way to support me. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.